The sheriff had one hand beneath Nora Callahan's sewing machine when the first woman stepped onto the porch. Then another came through the gate behind her. By the time Silas Abernathy looked up from the foreclosure notice, 26 people were standing in the road outside Nora's small house at the edge of Elkhorn. Ranch wives, miners, a school teacher, 2 freight drivers, the owner of the company store. Men who had barely nodded to Nora since her husband died now held folded canvas coats, wool blankets, torn harness covers, and order slips with their names at the bottom. Sheriff Hale shifted his grip on the walnut cabinet. "Mrs. Callahan," he said quietly, "I believe these people are here for you." Nora kept one hand on the machine. "No," she said. "They're here for the work." Abernathy folded the notice once, then again. He had come to take the only tool standing between Nora and the loss of her home. What he had not expected was to discover that half the town now depended on it. 3 weeks earlier, Nora had been trying to cross the Dusty Spur Saloon without anyone noticing how slowly her daughter walked. Elkhorn, Montana territory had grown around silver, timber, and the belief that hard men could force a mountain to surrender. By October of 1885, the town had 2 hotels, 5 saloons, a church with an unfinished steeple, a schoolhouse that leaned north, and a company store that charged more for flour whenever the road from Helena turned bad. It also had 29 widows. Nora Callahan had become one of them in April. 6 months had taught her how to move through Elkhorn without asking for anything. She knew which boardwalks creaked loudly enough to turn heads. She knew how to fold the worn side of her shawl inward. She knew how to place herself between other people and the cracked toes of Ada's boots. What she had not learned was how to make a hungry 6-year-old stop looking at food. Nora had gone to the Dusty Spur to ask Mr. Dunmore whether he needed floors scrubbed after closing. He had told her no with the flat impatience of a man who had already said no twice that month. "There may be work before Christmas," he said, wiping a glass that was already clean. "Not now." Nora thanked him because refusing to thank people had begun to cost more than pride. She and Ida were nearly at the door when Ida stopped. Her small hand tightened around Nora's fingers. Across the room, near the window, a rancher sat alone before a plate of beef, potatoes, and 2 biscuits split open with butter. Ida did not point. She did not ask. She simply looked long enough that Nora felt shame rise in her throat, even though the shame did not belong to either of them. The rancher followed the child's gaze to his plate. He was 28, sun-browned, broad through the shoulders without being large, with a quiet face that looked older when he was thinking. He put down his fork. "Ma'am," he said, standing, "would you and your girl help me with a problem?" Nora's body went still. "What problem?" "I ordered more than I can finish." Ida looked at the second biscuit. Nora looked at the door. "We don't accept charity." The rancher nodded as though she had told him something useful. "Neither do I. I'm Tate Bowen. I paid for this food, and I dislike waste. If your daughter eats what I cannot, then the plate is cleared, the cook is satisfied, and I don't have to carry a biscuit home in my coat." Ida looked at Nora. Nora had eaten half an apple that morning and told Ida she had already taken breakfast at the laundry. The lie had worked because Ida wanted it to. Pride was easier to defend when only one person was hungry. Nora sat. Tate moved the plate to the middle of the table and asked Ida whether she preferred butter on the biscuit or beside it. He did not watch her eat. That small kindness made Nora more grateful than the food. Daniel Callahan had died in the Elkhorn Queen Mine on a Tuesday morning in April. A timber cap split beneath a weight it had carried too long, and part of the north drift came down before the warning reached the men working below it. Daniel and 2 others were buried behind rock and broken beams. The company cleared the passage for 11 days. Everyone knew by the second that it was recovery work, not rescue. Daniel had been 33. He left Nora a 6-year-old daughter, a small house with 1 room added crookedly at the back, and a debt of $187. The house was theirs, but not entirely. The previous winter, Daniel had borrowed against it to buy a share in a small prospect east of town. He had told Nora about the loan. He had not expected the prospect to fail before the first payment came due. The note also listed Nora's treadle sewing machine as security. The machine had belonged to her mother. Its black iron base had worn smooth where 2 generations of shoes had worked the pedal. The walnut cabinet carried a pale burn mark from a lamp Nora knocked over when she was 14. Her mother had taught her to sew on it, first straight seams, then cuffs, buttonholes, coats, and the heavy repairs men brought home from places that tore cloth faster than women could mend it. After Daniel died, that machine became the only object in the house that could still earn money. Nora washed clothes, patched miners' shirts, shortened dresses, and repaired flour sacks. The work kept food in the cupboard some weeks. It never reached the principal on the note. Silas Abernathy of the Elkhorn Bank had given her until the first snow. In September, Nora stopped eating supper every night. Ida noticed in October. Tate noticed in the saloon. He did not mention it. When Ida finished the biscuit, Tate asked Nora whether she repaired canvas. What kind? Saddle blanket. Split along the binding. I tried a harness shop in town, but they said to replace it. Most men who sell new things say that. A corner of his mouth moved. What would you charge? Nora named a price low enough that she regretted it before the number left her mouth. Tate did not bargain. I'll bring it tomorrow. He arrived before noon with the blanket, 2 work shirts, a torn feed sack, and a canvas coat whose right pocket had pulled free. Nora spread the coat across her kitchen table. The shoulder seam had begun to separate where rainwater had stiffened the thread. The pocket had failed because the original maker had stitched it directly to the outer cloth without reinforcing the strain behind it. This was expensive, she said. Too expensive. It was made quickly. That seems to cost more in every business. Nora looked at him, uncertain whether he meant the coat or the mine that had killed Daniel. He did not explain. She repaired the pocket with a square of hidden canvas behind it and reset the shoulder using waxed linen thread. Where the saddle blanket had split, she cut away the rotted edge, folded the remaining cloth twice, and stitched a box pattern across the corner. Tate returned 2 days later. He examined the work without pretending to understand it. How long will that hold? Longer than the rest of the blanket. He paid her 3 cents more than she had asked. Nora pushed the coins back. The price was $22. I brought 4 pieces, not 1. We agreed on 22. Then the extra 3 is for telling me why the coat failed. Advice was not part of the order. It should have been. Nora looked at the coins, then at him. She kept them. The next week, Tate found reasons to bring more work. A torn curtain from his farmhouse, a cracked leather strap that needed a canvas sleeve, 2 shirts with cuffs worn through. He paid fairly, collected when he said he would, and never left food on Nora's table disguised as an accident. Other orders followed, but not because Tate carried Nora's name around town like a charity appeal. A freight driver saw the repaired saddle blanket and asked who had saved it. A ranch wife noticed the square stitching inside Tate's coat pocket. A miner brought Nora a canvas lunch satchel that had split at the bottom. She returned it with a reinforced lining that could carry twice the weight. By the end of the first week, Nora had 5 orders waiting on the chair beside the machine. Ida began sorting buttons into saucers and winding thread onto wooden spools. She took the work seriously, even when the buttons rolled beneath the stove. You're supposed to be learning letters, Nora told her. I can learn letters after buttons. Buttons do not wait for you at school. Miss Carter does. Nora had no answer to that. On Friday, while delivering a repaired wagon cover near the freight yard, Nora saw a pile of canvas beneath the loading shed. There were 23 bolts of heavy cotton duck, each wrapped around a wooden core. A wagon carrying them from Fort Benton had slipped into a creek 2 weeks earlier. The water had stained the outer layers and mildew had started along several edges. The company store had rejected the shipment. Mr. Bell, the freight agent, planned to sell the bolts as wrapping scrap. Nora knelt beside the pile and pressed her thumb into the weave. The outside smelled sour. 3 layers down, the cloth was clean, dense, and stronger than anything sold by the yard in Elkhorn. "How much?" she asked. Belle laughed. "For all of it? For the cloth that is still sound. It has been sitting in creek water. So have half the boots in this town. What is the price?" He studied her, then named $6. Nora had $4.80 hidden in a flour tin at home. That money was meant for food, lamp oil, and the next interest payment. She offered $4. Belle said $5. Nora said $4.50, but he had to deliver it. They settled at $4.60, with delivery before dark. When Tate arrived that evening, Nora's kitchen had disappeared beneath wet canvas. He stood in the doorway. "Did a tent die in here? Take off your boots." He did. Nora had cut away the worst edges and hung strips near the stove, careful not to scorch them. She rubbed one clean section with a mixture of beeswax and tallow, then poured water across it. The drops gathered and rolled off. Tate touched the surface. "What are you making?" "A coat that does not fail at the shoulder. Mine does that already. Yours cost $12. How much will this one cost? If I can cut around the damaged cloth, line only the chest and back, and keep the seams where the water cannot sit, less than $5. For a winter coat? For a work coat. Winter is what men wear beneath it." Nora measured him before he understood he had agreed to be the first model. The coat took 2 days. It had a high collar, double cloth across the shoulders, deep pockets reinforced from inside, and short gussets beneath the arms so a man could lift a shovel without pulling the seams apart. Nora lined the chest with wool cut from Daniel's old blanket and left the sleeves unlined for movement. Tate wore it into a steady rain on Sunday. When he returned, the shoulders were dark with water. The shirt beneath them was dry. Nora checked every seam. Ida looked up at him and asked, "Did Mama make you better than the store?" Tate considered the question. "She made the coat better. I remain about the same." Ida accepted that. By Monday, 3 ranchers wanted coats. 2 miners asked for shorter versions that would not catch on timber underground. Miss Carter wanted 6 capes for school children whose families could not afford winter clothes. Dr. Mercer asked whether Nora could make washable mattress covers for the infirmary. Nora wrote every order in a ledger Daniel had once used for mine shifts. She calculated cloth, thread, lining, labor, waste, and delivery. The numbers showed something she had not allowed herself to imagine. If the orders held, the machine could pay the debt. Not eventually, within 2 years. Tate saw the figures when he brought a bundle of wool scraps from his ranch. "You should show Abernathy." "I will when the orders are signed." "He may wait too long." "He has waited 6 months. He gave you until the first snow, and it has not snowed." Tate looked toward the window. The mountain above Elkhorn had turned white at the highest ridge. The next afternoon, he went to the bank without her. Nora learned about it from Mr. Abernathy himself. The banker came to her door carrying his hat and the careful expression of a man about to explain someone else's mistake. "Mr. Bowen offered to guarantee part of your note." Nora did not invite him inside. "He did what?" "He appears confident in your prospects." "My prospects were not his to offer." Abernathy cleared his throat. "The bank appreciates additional security. The bank has my house and my machine. The value of the house has declined since spring. The house did not kill my husband." "That is not what I meant. It is what you measured." Abernathy placed his hat back on his head. "I came as a courtesy. The board has reviewed several outstanding notes. Your balance will be due next Friday. The agreement says first snow. The agreement allows the bank to demand payment if the security falls below the balance." Nora felt the porch tilt beneath her feet. "How much do you expect by Friday?" "All of it. $187? Less what you have paid. $179.40. Nora almost laughed. The number was too large for fear to enter all at once. Abernathy left. She found Tate repairing fence near the south pasture. He saw her coming and set down the post mall. "What happened?" "You went to the bank." His face changed. "I asked what they would accept. You offered to guarantee my debt. I offered security until your orders were established. You offered my future while I was not in the room." "Nora, no. You saw a problem and decided you were the man best placed to solve it. I was trying to keep them from taking the house. The house is mine to lose. And Ida's." The words struck harder because he believed them. Nora stepped closer. "Do not use my daughter to make your decision sound like mine." Tate's jaw tightened, then loosened. He looked away toward the cattle. "You're right." Nora had expected defense. The apology left her anger with nowhere easy to go. "I knew what hunger looked like in the saloon," he said. "My mother used to say she had eaten before us. She was not convincing either. When Abernathy mentioned the deadline, I remembered every room we lost because no one moved quickly enough. That explains why you were afraid. It does not give you permission." "No." He met her eyes. "What do you need me to do?" "Nothing until I ask." "All right. And when I ask, you do exactly that, not more." "All right." Nora turned toward the road, then stopped. "Tomorrow, I need a wagon." "What for?" "I am going to collect signatures from every person who ordered a coat, cape, cover, or blanket. You may drive, you may keep the horse steady. You may say nothing unless I ask you a question." Tate picked up his hat. "What time?" 7. He was outside her gate at 6:45. For 2 days, Nora went from ranch to ranch and door to door. She brought the finished coat, a child's cape, a square of treated canvas, her ledger, and a price list written in her own hand. She did not ask for sympathy. She asked for deposits. Some people hesitated. Nora explained the cloth, the seams, the delivery dates, and what happened if an order was canceled after cutting began. She spoke differently to every customer because every customer feared something different. Ranchers feared wasted money. Mothers feared cold children. Miners feared clothing that caught underground. The company store feared being undercut. By Thursday evening, Nora had 12 signed orders and $21 in deposits. It was not enough to satisfy the bank. It was enough to prove the work existed. That night, a coal oil lantern fell in the rear warehouse of the company store. The fire began in a crate of paper goods and climbed the dry shelving before anyone saw smoke. Men formed a bucket line from the pump. They saved the front room, the flour, the medicine, and most of the tools. They did not save the winter clothing. 38 miners' coats burned. 20 wool blankets burned. Children's boots, gloves, scarves, canvas leggings, and nearly every heavy garment ordered for the first snow turned to black water and ash. The replacement freight was still north of Helena. A rock slide had closed the mountain road 2 days earlier. The first snow was expected within a week. At sunrise, Mr. Bell from the freight yard knocked on Nora's door. Behind him stood the mine superintendent, the school teacher, Dr. Mercer, and Mr. Dunmore from the Dusty Spur. The superintendent held one of Nora's shorter canvas coats. "Can you make 30 more?" "No." His shoulders dropped. Nora continued. "I can make 30 if I have help, 40 if the company supplies wool, thread, needles, and lamps, more if I have a second machine. We can find one. I will choose it. Of course. Half payment before cutting, the rest on delivery. Every woman who works is paid by the piece. No company store credit. Cash." Mr. Bell looked at the others. The superintendent said, "Agreed." Mr. Dunmore removed his hat. "The upstairs room at the Spur is empty until December. You can use it." Nora remembered standing at his bar 3 weeks earlier, asking to scrub floors. "How much?" He looked uncomfortable. "Nothing." Then, You are donating space to the town, not to me. We write that down. He nodded. By noon, Nora had a workroom. She also had a problem. Her sewing machine remained security on a note due the following morning. Nora spent Thursday afternoon organizing the room above the dusty spur. She recruited 3 women who already knew basic sewing and 2 who did not. One was a miner's widow named Ruth Pritchard. One was May Lynn, who ran a laundry near the creek and could sew a straight seam faster than Nora could mark it. Miss Carter brought older schoolgirls to cut lining and sort buttons after class. Tate carried tables upstairs and asked where to place them. Nora pointed. He placed them there. He did not make another decision. Ida sat on the floor with chalk, marking small pieces as Nora taught her which scraps could become pocket reinforcements and which were too weak to use. At dusk, Nora returned home and polished the walnut cabinet of the treadle machine. She did not know whether she was preparing it for work or making it presentable for seizure. Ida stood beside her. Can they take Mama's machine if people need coats? Yes. That is foolish. Yes. Can you tell them not to? I can tell them what it will cost. The next morning, Sheriff Hale arrived with Silas Abernathy. The banker brought the notice. The sheriff brought a wagon. Nora had already removed the thread and folded the machine into its cabinet when they knocked. Abernathy read the demand in a low voice. He did not enjoy the work, but he intended to complete it. The bank will take possession of the machine and the house. You may remove clothing, bedding, food, and personal effects by Monday. How much do you expect the machine to bring? Nora asked. At auction? Perhaps $30. And the house? $80 if there is a buyer. So the bank will lose money. The bank will recover what it can. Nora opened her ledger. I have 43 confirmed orders. The mine company owes half in advance. The school district has ordered 8 capes. Dr. Mercer has ordered 12 washable covers. Ranch families have ordered coats and wagon canvas. Deposits already total $21. Abernathy glanced at the figures. Orders are not payment. They become payment when the work is done. And if the work is not done, then taking the machine guarantees it will not be. Sheriff Hale looked toward the road. The first customers had arrived. Ruth Pritchard came carrying a bundle of cut lining. May Lynn stood beside her. Miss Carter brought 3 mothers from the school. Then the mine superintendent appeared with a written purchase order and a canvas coat over his arm. Tate remained near the gate. Nora had told him not to speak. He did not. More people gathered until the road filled. Abernathy folded the foreclosure notice. This is irregular. So was moving the deadline. The bank acted within the note, and I am asking the bank to act within arithmetic. Nora turned the ledger toward him. Leave the machine. Extend the balance for 2 years. Take 10 cents from every dollar paid on these orders until the note is cleared. The deposits stay with me for material and wages. The company payments go through your bank. You will recover more than you will from an empty house and a machine sold at auction. Abernathy studied the page. What protects the bank if your orders stop after winter? The house remains security, the machine remains security, and the mine company's contract runs through March. The superintendent stepped forward. If the first 15 coats meet the sample, I will sign through March. Nora looked at him. You will sign before I cut company cloth. He nodded. Abernathy looked through the open doorway at the sewing machine, then at the people in the road, then at the purchase order. He was not remembering his mother. He was not moved by Ida's boots or Nora's grief. He was calculating. That was exactly what Nora needed him to do. The bank will require weekly accounts, he said. You may see the accounts, you may not price the work. A late payment voids the extension. 1 late payment after 30 days' notice. 15. 20. Abernathy looked annoyed. Agreed. Sheriff Hale lowered his hands from the sewing machine. The people in the road began talking at once. Nora closed the ledger. Do not congratulate me yet, she said. We have 43 orders and 6 days before snow. The upstairs room at the Dusty Spur ran nearly without stopping. The treadle machine worked from dawn until midnight. Nora sewed the heavy shoulder seams and collars. Maylin handled the long, straight sides. Ruth attached pockets. Miss Carter's older girls basted linings. Ida counted buttons, carried thread, and reminded grown women when they had skipped supper. Tate cut firewood, hauled finished pieces, collected wool, and drove deliveries. When a freight driver told him the coat price was too high, Tate pointed upstairs and said, "You will have to discuss that with Mrs. Callahan." Then he left Nora to do it. The work did not proceed cleanly. On the second night, the new machine the company purchased snapped its needle bar. Nora stripped it down on the table and found a casting crack beneath the faceplate. The store manager suggested returning it. "The road is closed," Nora said. She took a steel pin from a broken lamp hinge, filed it to size, and made a temporary brace that held the bar straight. On the third day, 2 finished coats leaked at the upper back because one worker had waxed the cloth after stitching instead of before. Nora did not hide the mistake or sell the coats cheaply. She opened the seams, replaced the shoulder panels, and paid the worker for the corrected piece. "You do not have to pay me twice," the woman said. "I am not. The first seam taught you. The second one is work." On the fourth afternoon, the temperature fell 20 degrees. Snow began before sunset. It came softly at first, gathering on porch rails and wagon seats. By midnight, the road to the mine had turned white. Nora delivered the first 15 coats herself. The miners stood beneath the hoist lamps while the superintendent distributed them. Luis Ortega pulled one over his wool shirt and raised both arms. The gussets opened without straining the sides. "Can swing a pick in this," he said. That was the idea. He pressed water from his old coat and looked at the treated shoulders. How long will it last? Long enough that you bring it back for repair instead of buying another. The men laughed, but they remembered the instruction. By the end of the week, every company order had been delivered. The school capes followed 2 days later. Then the infirmary covers. Then the ranch coats and wagon canvas. No one in Elkhorn became wealthy because Nora Callahan found damaged cloth beneath a freight shed. But miners stayed drier on the walk home. Children reached school without arriving soaked through. The infirmary could wash its mattress covers instead of burning them after sickness. 5 women were paid in cash for work the town had previously treated as small, private, and nearly worthless. Nora made the first bank payment the following Friday. Abernathy counted it twice. "Your accounts are clear," he said. "They will remain clear." The winter contract continued through March. In January, Nora rented the narrow storefront beside the bakery. The front room became a fitting space. The back held 2 treadle machines, a cutting table, shelves of thread, and a rack for repairs waiting to be collected. She hired Ruth and Maylin permanently. When business slowed, they made children's coats from offcuts and sold them at cost through the church. Nora paid the banknote in 18 months instead of 24. On the morning of the final payment, Abernathy brought the original note to the shop. He placed it on the counter with the lien release. The bank would consider financing an expansion, he said. Nora looked around the room. "I will consider whether the bank qualifies." Abernathy almost smiled. Almost. Tate continued bringing work long after he no longer needed to invent reasons. He also brought himself. He learned to ask before fixing anything in Nora's life. Sometimes the answer was yes. Often it was no. He discovered that Nora could accept help without surrendering direction, and Nora discovered that a man could be useful without making usefulness a claim of ownership. The following spring, after the debt was gone and the shop had been open 3 months, Tate asked whether he might court her properly. Nora was pinning a sleeve on a miner who had fallen asleep standing beside the fitting platform. "You have been eating supper at my table twice a week since October," she said. "I did not want to assume that counted." "It counts as supper." "Then may I court you in addition to supper?" Nora looked toward Ida, who was pretending not to listen from behind the cutting table. "You may ask again after planting." He did. They married the next autumn in the unfinished church beneath a steeple that still leaned slightly east. Nora kept the shop in her own name. Tate never asked her to change it. Ida grew up among spools, ledgers, chalk, cattle, and women who were paid for skilled work. She never forgot hunger, but it stopped being the first thing she remembered about childhood. Years later, when the original treadle machine was finally too worn for daily use, Nora placed it near the front window of the shop. Above it, she framed the first receipt Tate had signed for the repaired saddle blanket, work shirts, feed sack, and coat. The amount was small. Ida, nearly grown, once asked why that receipt mattered more than the mine contract or the lien release from the bank. Nora touched the pale burn mark on the walnut cabinet. "Because that was the first time after your father died that someone paid exactly what the work was worth," she said. "Not because he felt sorry for us, not because he expected something back, just because the work was good." The machine that Silas Abernathy had come to take never left Nora's house on the sheriff's wagon. Instead, it helped clothe a town, employ 5 women, pay a mortgage, and build a business no one could dismiss as charity. If Nora's story stayed with you, tell us what you believe mattered most. Tate seeing her hunger, Nora refusing to surrender her voice, or the town finally learning what her work was worth. Subscribe to Dusty Mercy for more forgotten stories from the American frontier.